Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mir Hashem today we will be learning Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today near the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. In the words of the Ramah, I believe we are 3 lines off the bottom near the end of the line by the word V'noi Hagim. That's so it's Siman Reish Ayin Aleph in the midst of Sif Yud. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzara Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yirachem Aleihem V'Yitziam Mitzara L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'Oiro Mishibud L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv V'Neimar Amein. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema for Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, and our learning should be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonasan ben Michal, and Yoel ben Michal. And the Rebbeinu Shalom should give shmira to every member of Klal Yisrael b'chol makayim shehem. Okay, so here in Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Yud, we've been discussing a very interesting question, and that is the question of when you should stand and when you should sit during Kiddush. Now, the Mechaber said that Vayechulu, the paragraph of Vayechulu, should be recited while standing. And we saw in the Mishnah Berurah that the reason for that is because Vayechulu is Edus. When we say Vayechulu, we are presenting testimony on the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom created everything during Sheishes Yemei Bereshis. Since Vayechulu has a din of Edus, Edus is always given Mu'umad. So by Vayechulu, we should be standing. That's what the Mechaber told us. Now, how about the bracha of Bar Pri Hagafen and the bracha of Kiddush, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvahs avarotzavanu? That the Mechaber didn't discuss. Came along the Ramah. The Ramah said, if you want to stand by Kiddush, you're standing by Vayechulu, like the Mechaber said. If you want to stand by Kiddush, Yachal Lamud, you could stand by Kiddush. Then the Ramah said, but it would be better to be sitting by Kiddush. The Mishnah Berurah Nice Memvav gave us 2 different reasons for that. He gave us one reason because sitting is considered more Kiddush b'makom Suda. When you sit around the table, that's the format of the Suda. The format of the Suda is to be sitting around the table and eating. So when you sit down, that's considered more Kiddush b'makom Suda. He also brought down the Shitas HaGra. The Gra said that there's another very powerful reason to sit, and that is that when you make the Bar Pri Hagafen and when you make the bracha of Kiddush, you're being moitzi other people. Now, when you want to be moitzi somebody else in something, when you want to be moitzi a group, you want to be kavua together. You want to be seated together as one group. So to create that kvius, the Gra said you should sit. The Mishnah Berurah said that that's he says that's a good idea. I mean, obviously the Chavetz Chaim is not giving his haskama to the Gra, but he brings this down, and then he says, I'll call upon him, at least if you're not going to sit by the bracha of Bar Pri Hagafen and by the bracha of Kiddush, at least everybody should be standing together around the table. You shouldn't have people vulgaring around, walking around the dining room, taking a detour to the living room. Yeah, they're listening, but they're not kavua together around the table. That you shouldn't have. You should have everybody standing together. That's where we are so far. Now we're going back into the words of the Ramah, 3 lines off the bottom on Mem Zayin Amud Beis. Says the Ramah, V'noi Hagim leishev af b'shah she'omer vayechulu. Interesting. The Ramah says that the minig was to sit even by Vayechulu. So they would sit for the entire Kiddush, from the beginning through the end, except, Rak, says the Ramah, Kishemaschilin, when they begin Kiddush, by the very beginning of Kiddush, Vayer Vayvoker Yom Hashishi Vayechulu, Rak Kishemaschilin, Oimdin Ktsas Lichvoid Hashem. At the very beginning of Kiddush, you have to stand for kavod, to give proper honor to the Shem Hashem, to the name of Hashem. What does that mean? Explains the Ramah. Ki maschilin, because you begin Kiddush, Yom Hashishi, Vayechulu Hashamayim. V'nirmaz Hashem b'Roshei Teves. The beginning letters, the Rosh Teves of Yom, that's a Yud, Hashishi, the Hey, Vayechulu is a Vav, Hashamayim is a Hey. So here you have Yud K Vav K. So the very first words of Kiddush, if you don't say Vayi Erev Vayi Voiker, there's different minhagim. Some people just start Yom Hashishi. So if you start with Yom Hashishi Vayichulu Hashamayim, that contains a remez to the Shem Hashem of Yud Kei Vav. Okay, so to give proper kavod to the Shem Hashem, you stand for the beginning Yom Hashishi Vayichulu Hashamayim. V'nirmaz Hashem baroshe tevos. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut mem zayin. Af b'shah, the Ramah said that the minig was to sit even by Vayichulu. The kevan sha'amaruah kfar bebeis hakneses mu'umid, because the reason to stand by Vayichulu was that you're saying edus. But you already said this edus, because you already said Vayichulu twice before you make Kiddush Friday night. You said Vayichulu when you davened your Shtilush Esrei. Then you said Vayichulu again together with the Tzibur after the Shtilush Esrei. So you already said your edus. When you're saying Vayichulu now at home, you're not saying edus anymore. Therefore, you could sit. The Kevin Chamaruah Kvar Bebeis Knesses Mu'umid, you already said it twice standing. Ein Makpidin Shoval Zeh, we're not Makpid anymore. And now you could say Vayichulu while you're sitting. Va'imra Maisai Meyushav Kemai Shar HaKiddush. Now, Lamaisa, there are minhagim uminhagim shoinim. The minig of my Rebbe, Reuben Feinstein, Zal Zayin Gesund und Stark, the minig of Rav Moshe Zechitzad V'Kadosh Levracha was to do like we saw over here between the Ramah, earlier in the Ramah, and the Mishnah Berurah, which was to stand for Vayichulu, and then to sit down for the Bari Priyagofen and the Bracha of Kiddush, kind of like the Ramah, the Mishnah Berurah, the Gra. That was their minig. My father, Oliver Shalom's minig, was to stand for the entire Kiddush. The Aruch HaShulchan brings down that Al Pi Kabbalah, there's a very strong reason to stand for the entire Kiddush. Very interesting. In the Sefer Divrei Yatziv, in the Shalos HaTshuvas Divrei Yatziv, that's the Shalos HaTshuvas of the Frierdiker Klosterberger Rebbe, he has a very lengthy tshuva. I believe it's 13 or 14 pages. He goes through a very, very lengthy tshuva, and a lot of it is dedicated to the need to stand for the entire Kiddush, Al Pi Kabbalah. It's a tshuva that was actually written to a cousin of mine, to my first cousin. Most of the listeners here are probably familiar with Hagayin Rav Asher Weiss from Eretz Yisrael. He's my first cousin. This tshuva was written to his brother, Reb Meir, who's an Adam Gadol, an Adam Chashav Ad Ma'od. This tshuva was written to him. And in that tshuva, the Klosterberger Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, writes very strongly to stand for the whole Kiddush. So there are minhagim, shoinim, and everybody should follow their minig. Okay, continues the Ramah. Says the Ramah on the bottom line here on Mem Zayin Amud Beis. Ukishem maschil, when you begin Kiddush, yitain einov baneros, you should look at the Neiros Shabbos when you begin Kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kotmem Ches, yitain einov baner, v'hu segulas refuah le'einayim. This is a special segula. Everybody loves segulas nowadays. This is a special segula for refuah le'einayim, to bring refuah, to bring healing to eyes, shekahu, that have become dimmed, meaning that somebody's vision has become impaired, al yedei pisia gasa. We're told that one of the things that causes vision to dim is pisia gasa. When people walk with very open, very long strides, that's considered to be gaiva. It's brought down that somebody who walks with a pisia gasa, he's doicha ragle hashchina. It's as if he's pushing away the shchina. What does that mean? You can't push away the Shechina. But when you walk around like a Baal Gaiva, it's like me, I'm an official. And it's like, okay, you're a big somebody over here, I, the Rabbeinu Shalom. So somebody who walks with a Psia Gasa is Doicha Ragle Ashchina, and it causes his vision to become impaired. A refuah for that would be to look at the Neiros at the time that you begin to make Kiddush. By the way, I would venture to say that a very, very powerful for a skula to have a refuah la'inayim, whether your vision is impaired through a psia gasa or anything else, is shmiras einayim, protecting your eyes, watching out what you look at, which nowadays is a tremendous nisayon. It's probably always been a nisayon, but nowadays shmiras einayim is a tremendous nisayon between the pritzas that you see out in the street and the pritzas that is shoved into your eyes everywhere that you go. You go to the supermarket and you want to check out, you go through the checkout aisle and you have all of these magazines with their filthy pictures on them. And of course there's the tremendous nisayon that people have of the internet and everything that that brings with it. So the need for Shmiras Einayim, and somebody who's nizar in Shmiras Einayim is probably a better schooler for refuah for Einayim than anything else, Rabbi say. But be that as it may, the Ramah said that at the beginning of Kiddush you should look at the Neiris. Another reason why you should look at the Neiris is because you're making Kiddush l'chvoid Shabbos, and these are the Neiris shel Shabbos. It's a little bit like the inyan of whenever you make a bracha, you're supposed to look at the chayfetz that you're making the bracha on. When you make a shahakal niyah b'dvaroi on a drink, you're supposed to look at the drink. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. When you mention Shem u'malchus, you're supposed to look at the thing that you're making the bracha on. When you put on your talis in the morning, you're supposed to look at the tzitzit strings when you make the bracha over the tzitzits. Because when you make a bracha, you have to make sure that you have kavanah, that you have intent over the item that you're making the bracha on. So it's important to look at the item that you're making the bracha on. When you make Kiddush, you're making Kiddush l'chvoid Shabbos, so you look at the neiros that are lit l'chvoid Shabbos. And interesting, what he brings down is what the Ramah says, that it's at the beginning of Kiddush, ukishamaschil. Now, I would like to research this a little bit more. I'm very curious to see what it says in the Darkei Moshe on the Torah, what if the Ramah expands upon this. I'm not sure what it means over here, ukishamaschil. Truth is, I just realized I had a sefer here. Yeshua Batanya, could you do me a favor? By the dining room table, there's my Mishnah Berurah before on the stender. I wonder if I could see any quick maramokum over there. What it means ukishemaschil, because ukishemaschil sounds like at the very beginning of Kiddush, which would be Yom Hashishi or Vayechulu, or does it mean by the beginning of the bracha of Kiddush? By Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvosav v'ratzavanu. I had in mind to do a little research in that, and I forgot to do so. This sefer over here sometimes has some interesting maramekaimis. Let me see if they say quickly. Yeah, over here they bring down ukishemaschil vayechulu, and they're taking that from. It looks like it's an El Yerabba. My lavush is in my study. It looks like it's an El Yerabba. And the lavush brings down here, the lavush says, it's when you say Yom Hashishi Vayechulu Hashamayim, which is what we saw is the remez to the shame. See, usually it's brought down that when you look, you should look at the chayfetz that you're making the bracha on when you say Shem u'malchus. But over here, maybe it's because Yom Hashishi Vayechulu Hashamayim is a remez to the shame. Maybe that's why it's appropriate to look at the nearest then. But be that as it may, that's what the Ramah simply says. Ukishamaschil, when you begin Kiddush, which would be Yom Hashishi Vayechulu Hashamayim. Okay, says the Ramah weiter, near the end of the bottom line, Mem Zayin up base. Ubishas HaKiddush Ubishas HaKiddush Ubishas Kiddush b'kos shel bracha. And when you make the bracha of Kiddush, you should look at the kos shel bracha. Because the kos shel bracha, you're making Kiddush al hakos. So when you make the bracha of Kiddush, look at the kos. V'chein nirali, and the Ramah says it would seem to me that is the appropriate way to make Kiddush. So again, at the very outset of Kiddush, you look at the nerish shel Shabbos. When you make the bracha of Kiddush, you look at the kos. Ayin L'Eil, Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, Sif Daled. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Cotton Mem Tes, Ayin L'Eil, Siman Kuf Pei Gimel. Hainu, what the intent of the Ramah sending us to Kuf Pei Gimel is, the Sham Bavur, over there it's explained, Sheyitain Eina B'kos shel bracha, Shelo Yasiach Daitoi. That whenever you're making a bracha over a kos shel bracha, you should look at the kos shel bracha so you're not Masiach Das from what it is that you're doing. Okay, now let's go into a very fascinating Sif over here. Sif Yod Aleph. Sif Yod Aleph is going to tell us what you do when you have a limited amount of wine. Now let's remember that over the course of Shabbos, there are primarily 3 times that you're going to need yayin. You need wine for Kiddush Friday night. Now wine for Kiddush Friday night, we've seen that Kiddush Friday night is a daraisa. The need for wine is really a darabanan. But it's a very, very strict derabanan, because we learned earlier that since the ikar of Kiddush, since the din of Kiddush Friday night is a daraisa, so the fact that the Chazal said that you need yayin for Kiddush also gets elevated. It's also like a shtickle of daraisa, because it's part of the daraisa of Kiddush. Kiddush Shabbos morning is only a D'Rabbanan. Then we have another time that we need wine. We also need wine for Havdalah. When Shabbos is going out, we need wine for Havdalah. So there are 3 times we need wine. We need wine Friday night, we need wine Shabbos day, and we need wine for Havdalah. Now, from those 3 times, there's one time where you really have an option where you could do something other than wine. Because Friday night, if you're stuck, you could be Mekadesh ala Pas. Now, against that backdrop, let's see what the Mechaber says here. It's Sif Yud Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Im ein loy ela kais echad. Let's say you only have available to you 1 kais of wine. Now, what size is that kais? So from the words of the Mechaber, we're going to see over here, it's very clear that the Mechaber is talking about a case where you have a kais, you have 1 cup of wine that is holding a revius plus somewhat more. How much more? At least a mole lugma, a cheekful, more than a revius, which is a little bit more than a revius and a half, because a mole lugma is roiv of a revius. So you have a kais that's holding a revius plus a mole lugma. Now, a mole lugma, according to most, is the minimum amount of wine that you have to drink in order to be Yotze Kiddush. So again, we have over here, says the Mechaber, Im ein lo ela kais echad. You only have 1 kais of yayin, and that kais has a revius plus a mole lugma. Now, what do? This is all the wine that you have for Shabbos. How do you parcel it out? Says the Mechaber, Mekadesh boy balayla. What you should do is like this. Use that kais to make Kiddush Friday night, because Friday night Kiddush comes before anything else. Friday night Kiddush, well, caveat, we'll see later in the Mechaber, we'll have to see between Kiddush Friday night and Havdalah. Right now, the Mechaber is not addressing Havdalah. Right now, the Mechaber is really addressing Friday night Kiddush and Shabbos day Kiddush. But you have this kais, says the Mechaber, Mekadesh boy balayla. The first thing you should do is use this kais for Kiddush Friday night. But the Mechaber is going to tell us how we could actually stretch this kais and use it for both Friday night and Shabbos by day. Says the Mechaber like this, Mekadesh boy balayla. The first thing you do is make Kiddush Friday night over the kais. Now, should you drink from it? Well, if you drink from it, you create a problem. If you drink from the kais, now the kais is a kais pogum. Remember what we learned earlier. Once you drink from a kais, it becomes a kais pogum. Now that it's a kais pogum, you can no longer use it for Kiddush. So if you're going to drink from it, now it's invalidated, it's unavailable for use for Shabbos morning. Now, as far as the amount of wine is concerned, you really have enough wine here for Kiddush times 2, because the minimum share of a kais for Kiddush is a revius. The minimum amount of wine that you have to drink to be Yotze Kiddush is a mole lugma. Now, you have a revius plus a mole lugma. So if you take this kais and you make Kiddush on it, and then you drink a mole lugma, so you owe Yotze Kiddush Friday night, and you still have a revius for Kiddush for Shabbos morning. The problem is that if you drink from the kais, you make it a kais pogum. Once you make it a kais pogum, you can't use it for Shabbos morning anymore. So the Mechaber is going to tell us how to get around the problem of a kais pogum. Then the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that he doesn't like the Mechaber's Eitzah, and he's going to give us a different Eitzah. But let's see the Mechaber's Eitzah. So again, Im ein lo ela kais echad. You only have 1 kais, but it's a revius plus a mole lugma. Mekadesh boy balayla, make Kiddush Friday night, ve'enoi tayim mimenu, but don't drink from it. Shalo yafki menu, so that you shouldn't make it a kais pogum. But what do? You have to drink. So what do? Says the Mechaber, Ella, what you should do is, Shoifech mimenu lekais acher. Take the kais, when you finish making Kiddush, and pour over from the kais into a different cup. Pour it over into a different kais. V'tayim yayin shal Kiddush me'a kais hasheni. Drink a mole lugma from the second kais. So you had a kais that has a revius plus a mole lugma. Make Kiddush on that kais. When you finish Kiddush, pour a mole lugma over into a second cup, drink the mole lugma. Now you were Yotze Kiddush Friday night, and you still have a kais that has a revius in it that's available for Kiddush Shabbos morning. Ulemachar, tomorrow, Mekadesh b'masha nishar b'kais rishon. Tomorrow you'll make Kiddush over the revius that remains in the first kais. So very simple. So again, let's just give you the Mechaber's Eitzah very quickly. You only have one kais for your whole Shabbos, but that kais holds a revius plus a malei lugma. So fine, you have the minimum shear that you need for the kais to hold for Kiddush. You have a revius, but you also have another malei lugma. Malei lugma is the amount that you have to drink in order to be Yotze Kiddush. So fine, make Kiddush Friday night, but you can't drink from the cup, because if you drink from the kais, you make the whole kais a kais pogum. So instead of drinking from the kais, pour a malei lugma into a second kais, drink the malei lugma, now you are Yotze Kiddush for Friday night, and now you have a kais that holds a revius to make Kiddush with tomorrow morning. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katanun. Shoifech mimenu. You should pour out from the kais into another kais. How much should you pour out? Kisher malei lugmav. You should pour out a malei lugma, which is the minimum amount of wine you have to drink to be Yotze Kiddush. Ois Katanun Aleph, the Mechaber said, and now drink the malei lugma me hakais hasheni, from the second kais. Says the Mishnah Berurah, not so fast. Uve Magen Avram hiskem ladas ha-Tosfos. But over here we have a concern. The Magen Avram agrees with the Shita of Tosfos in Psachim, the kais shel chayva, that when you're drinking a kais that you must drink, like over here, the kais of Kiddush, you have a chiyuv to drink that kais, tzarich lihiyais ha-ti'ima, you need to do the drinking dafka mikais sheyesh by revius yayin. When you make Kiddush, that Kiddush has to hold a revius. It's not enough, says Tosfos, that you should make Kiddush over a kais that has a revius and then pour into another kais and drink from a separate kais. No, the drinking has to be out of a kais that holds a revius. So according to Tosfos, the Mechaber's Eitzah doesn't work. The Mechaber is telling you that you should pour a malei lugma into a second kais, but then you're drinking your Kiddush wine from a kais that's not holding a revius of yayin. According to Tosfos, you're not Yotze. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, Valkain, therefore, based on this Magen Avram and this sheet of Tosfos, Hanachain sheyasakach. What is more appropriate is to follow the following procedure, not the Mechaber's procedure, a slightly different procedure. What you should do is like this. Make Kiddush. Then, yishpaich mitchila me'akais harishain l'soich kais acher. What you should do is, you have your kais that's holding a revius plus a malei lugma. Okay, make Kiddush. When you finish making Kiddush, before you drink, pour some of the wine into a second kais. But make sure that the first kais still has a revius. V'yizar sheyishara by revius yayin. Make sure that the first kais still has a revius of yayin in it. Now, when you're ready to drink, v'yitam me'akais harishon. Drink from the first kais, kisher malei lugma. Drink a malei lugma from the first kais. Now you made the first kais pogum. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's okay. V'achakach yishpaich hayayin shebekais acher l'soich kais zeh. Now take the second kais that you poured some wine into, pour it back into the first kais that you just drank from. De bazen niskan pigimasai. Now you're being misakin it. Now it's no longer considered pogum. Because what we learned is, how do you fix up a kais pogum? By adding some wine into it. Ukidelael b'simin kuf pei beis sivav, like we learned in kuf pei beis, and we mentioned in the previous year, v'yuchal kaddish alav. And now you can make kiddush on that second kais tomorrow, im yesh bayata revius yayin, as long as it's going to have a revius yayin. So again, what's the Mishnah Berurah's Eitzah? The Mishnah Berurah's Eitzah is like this. Recite Kiddush over your kais that's holding a revius plus a malei lugma. When you finish Kiddush, take the cup, pour out some wine into a second kais. How much wine should you pour out? You just need a little bit. You just need a drop. But make sure that when you pour wine from the first kais into the second kais, make sure that the first kais still has at least a revius in it. Now drink your Kiddush wine from the first kais. So now you made Kiddush over a kais that held at least a revius, and you drank your Kiddush wine from a kais that's still holding a revius. Now, by virtue of the fact that you drank from the first kais is pogum. Okay, take the wine that you spilled into the second kais, pour it back into the first kais, and now you're masakin the kais. It's no longer pogum. The first kais now also is holding at least a revius, and now you'll use that kais for Kiddush tomorrow morning. That's the Eitzah of the Mishnah Berurah based on the Magen Avram and Tosfos. Says the Mishnah Berurah in the brackets, V'afta be'el Yerabba docha dvarav, even though the El Yerabba doesn't like this Magen Avram, v'soiver de ka'atzas ha'shulchan aruch adifa tvei, the El Yerabba says that the Mechaber's Eitzah is better. Take a look at the Sefer Shabbos, who answers up all of the El Yerabba's complaints on the Magen Avram. Ois cotton nun base. So now, if we go back to what the Mechaber's Eitzah was, the Mechaber's Eitzah was, make Kiddush on the first kais, pour a moli lugma into the second kais, and then drink from the second kais. And now you'll still have the first kais for Kiddush tomorrow. Ois cotton nun base, mekadosh b'masha nishar. Tomorrow you'll make Kiddush for whatever's left from the first kais. Miloshen zeh mashma. From the Loshen of the Mechaber, it's mashma, the mekadosh b'zeh ha-kais gufa. Now, it's very interesting. From the language on the Mechaber, it sounds very much like, what are you going to do? You're going to make Kiddush Friday night over the kais. Now, ostensibly, when you make Kiddush Friday night, the kais is full. But now you're going to pour out a moli lugma into a second kais. And you're going to drink your Friday night Kiddush wine, according to the Mechaber, from the second kais. Then the Mechaber says, take whatever's left in the original kais and use this kais tomorrow morning for Kiddush. But now this kais is no longer full, right? Because you just poured a moli lugma out of it, so it's no longer a full kais. So from the Mechaber, it sounds like tomorrow, Shabbos morning, you're going to make Kiddush on a kais that's not moli. It's not going to be full. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cotton on beis, miloshen zeh, mashpa de bekadosh b'zeh kais gufa. From the Mechaber, it sounds like you're actually using that first kais for Kiddush tomorrow. V'after le'el b'sif yud kasav de tzarech liyos ha-kais mole. Even though we learned yesterday that one of the requirements of Kiddush is that Kiddush has to be made over a kais mole, over a full kais. Zeh rak l'mitzvah ve'en ma'akiv v'mein loi. We said yesterday that it's not li'ikuva. It's not a strict requirement. It's a hid or mitzvah that the kais should be mole al kol gedoisav, but it's not ma'akiv. Upashit, and it's simple to understand, says the Mishnah Berurah. If you have another kais that's smaller, so pour out the wine from the original kais into the smaller kais, kedeshi mole. So now you should be able to make kiddush over a full kais kedas ukedin. Okay. So that was the first scenario of the Mechaber. Now let's go to another scenario. 3 lines down in the middle of a line. So in the first scenario, we had one kais of yayin. That kais held a revius plus a moli lugma. So when it came to the amount of wine that you have enough wine for more than one kiddush, because each kiddush requires a kais that holds a revius. And each kiddush needs a minimum of a moli lugma to drink. If you have a revius plus a moli lugma, so you make kiddush Friday night, you drink a moli lugma, you have a revius left to make kiddush over tomorrow by day. But now let's go to scenario number 2. Says the Mechaber 3 lines down the middle of the line. V'im lo yahaya ela revius b'tzimtzum. Now, what do you do if the only kais you have of yayin is exactly a revius? Now you don't seem to have enough wine. Because you're going to make Kiddush Friday night, you're going to drink a moli lugmav, which is roiv of a revius. Now you have less than half a revius left for tomorrow morning. You can't make Kiddush on less than half of a revius. So what do you do for Shabbos morning? So it says the Mechaber like this. If you only have exactly a revius available to you, and now you're going to drink from it Friday night, so you're not going to have a revius left for tomorrow morning. Says the Mechaber, moiz goy lemachar. You know what you're going to do? Dilute it tomorrow with water. Lahashlimay l'revius. You'll dilute it, and by diluting it, you'll make a revius out of it. Now, right away, let's take a look here. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you're going to dilute it? So first of all, says the Mishnah Berurah, is cutting on gimel, revius b'tzimtzum. The way the Mechaber gives you the case is, you have one kais and it's exactly a revius. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's lav dafka. The lashon of the Mechaber is a little bit imprecise. Elahu adinim afilu yesh lo yosim izeh. Doesn't the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber's scenario over here doesn't only apply to a case where you have exactly a revius. Afilu yesh lo yosim izeh. Even if you have a revius plus a little bit, but it's not a revius plus a full mole lugma. It's a revius plus less than a mole lugma. And I feel yesh lo yosim izeh ela da'aka ti'imas mole lugma. But after you drink a mole lugma Friday night, lo yishar lo yikisher revius, there's going to be less than a revius left, right? The Mechaber is trying to give you a case where you're going to make Kiddush Friday night, you're going to drink your Friday night Kiddush, which is how much? A mole lugma. And now you're not going to have a revius left for tomorrow morning. That's not only applicable if you have a case that's exactly a revius. That's also applicable if you have a case that's a revius plus a half of a mole lugma. So tomorrow morning, you're going to drink a mole lugma, you're going to have less than a revius. So why did the Mechaber spell out the case that you have a revius mitzumtzum? Let's remember, we're talking about the Mechaber. The Mechaber, every word is written by Baruch HaKodesh. He didn't just write it because, that's the way he wrote it. If he wrote it that way, there was an intent behind it. What was his intent? Says the Chavetz Chaim, I'll tell you what his intent was. Ela denoket hachi l'revusa. The reason the Mechaber gives you this scenario in a case where you had exactly a revius mitzumtzum is because there's a hidden chiddush here. What the Mechaber is telling you is that even in this case where you have exactly a revius, and you drank a mole lugma Friday night, which means that now you have left less than half of a revius, because a mole lugma is roiv of a revius. So now you drank a mole lugma Friday night, now you have less than a revius left. Still, says the Mechaber, you could be misakin, you could dilute the wine and make a revius for tomorrow. Now you realize that means that what's in the cup is going to be roiv mayim. It's going to be a majority of yayin and a minority. It's going to be roiv mayim. It's going to be a majority water and only a miut yayin. Still, you could dilute it. Okay. Umayri, but, says the Mishnah Berurah, this is talking about a case, kishahaya hayayin chazak. Obviously, you must be talking about strong wine, sha'achar hamaziga, where even after you dilute it, yuchal kaddish alav, it's still considered wine, and you can make kiddush on it. V'ayin lekaman b'siman reish ayin beis sif hey, and for details of that, how much you could dilute wine and still consider it wine, we'll discuss that later in siman reish ayin vav sif hey. Okay, so the second scenario over here was that you had one place available, and it was a revius mitzumtzum. You made Kiddush Friday night, you drank a mole lugmav, now you have less than half a revius for tomorrow morning. How are you going to make Kiddush alayayin tomorrow morning? Says the Mechaber, there's an eitzah. Dilute it, add water. If the wine is strong, add water, bring it back up to a revius. And now you can make Kiddush Shabbos morning over this case as well. Now, there's one thing the Mechaber didn't mention, and that is, how about the fact that it's a kais pagum? You made Kiddush over this kais Friday night, and now it's a kais pagum. You made a bracha, you already drank from it. How could you use it tomorrow morning? The answer is because by adding water to it, you're masakin it. The same way you could fix up a kais pagum by adding wine, you could also fix up a kais pagum by adding water. And you're adding water, so you're fixing up the fact that it was a kais pagum. Now continues the Mechaber 4 lines down the middle of the line. So we had two scenarios here so far. But both of these scenarios only covered two requirements for wine. We discussed Friday night Kiddush and we discussed Shabbos day Kiddush. But what we did not factor in was Havdalah. So now it says the Mechaber like this. V'hainu davka kisheyesh lo kais acher lahavdalah. All of what I just told you, says the Mechaber, is only germane if you have wine for Havdalah. If you don't have wine for Havdalah, then the math changes. Because if you don't have wine for Havdalah, then things change. Mutav sheyanichena lahavdalah. Now it's better that you should leave your available wine for Havdalah. Why? Because let's remember, Friday night, if you don't have wine, you can make Kiddush ala pas. So okay, Friday night, you have another option. Make Kiddush ala pas. Shabbos morning, well, Havdalah, the Mechaber holds, takes precedence over Kiddush Hayom. Why? There's various reasons for it. First of all, remember, Kiddush Hayom is strictly a D'Rabbanan. There are those that hold that Havdalah is a Daraisa. So that's one reason. Also, we saw earlier that Kvoid Hayom, the Suda of Shabbos day, takes precedence over Kiddush Hayom. If you have limited financial resources and you have a choice, Kvoid Hayom or Kiddush Hayom, Kvoid Hayom comes first. Because Kiddush is only an extension of Kvoid Hayom. And Havdalah comes before Kvoid Hayom. So if Havdalah comes before Kvoid Hayom, Havdalah definitely comes before Kiddush Hayom. But be that as it may, the Mechaber clearly holds that the order of priority over here is Friday night Kiddush, Havdalah, Shabbos day Kiddush. But Friday night Kiddush has another option. You can be Mekadesh ala Pas. So be Mekadesh ala Pas Friday night, save the wine for Havdalah, Shabbos day, you won't be able to make Kiddush. So again, the Mechaber said, "V'hainu dafke kisheisha kasaka lavdala." Shem loikein, if you don't have a kais for Havdalah, mutav sheyani chen lavdala. Save the wine for Havdalah. She'ef shebapas, because you can't make Havdalah ala pas, but Kiddush ala pas you could make. Misha yikadish ala v'lo yehe lo yayin lavdala. Better save the wine for Havdalah. Better do that than make Kiddush on the wine and then don't have wine for Havdalah. So go ahead and make Kiddush ala Pas Friday night, make Havdalah Motzi Shabbos on Yayin. Shabbos day is going to lose out. Shabbos day you're not going to be able to make Kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Nundal. V'hainu dafka. This is all only germane if you have wine for Havdalah. The Mechaber is going back on what he said at the outset over here, that if you only have one kais, you should use it for Kiddush Friday night. This is only true that if you have wine for Havdalah. The case that the Mechaber is talking about over here must be where you have a kais that's exactly a revius, and it's already diluted as much as it can be diluted. Because if you have a kais that is more than a revius, and it's not diluted yet, so make Kiddush Friday night, drink a mole lugmov, and then dilute it and use it for Havdalah. In other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you is this, that the Mechaber gives you a case where you're stuck. You're either going to use the Yayin Friday night and then not have Yayin for Havdalah, or don't use it Friday night and have it for Havdalah, and the Mechaber says save it for Havdalah. That's talking about a case where you have a kais that is only going to cover one. Why is it only going to cover one? Because it's exactly a revius, or a little bit more than a revius, and it's already mozug, it's already diluted, so you can't dilute it. If you have the option of diluting it, so make Kiddush Friday night, drink a mole lugmav, then dilute it, bring it back up to a revius, and use it Motzi Shabbos for Havdalah. So obviously you don't have that option. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here. Ois kat nun vav, given the choice between Friday night and Motzi Shabbos, save the yayin for Havdalah, Motzi Shabbos. Ois kat nun vav, she enichen al Havdalah. V'yesh oimrim, but there are those that say the Kiddush halayla oduf me Havdalah. There are those that say that Kiddush Friday night on Yayin takes precedence over Havdalah, even though you could make Kiddush ala Pas Friday night, because they reason that Kiddush Friday night is a daraisa. And I mentioned this at the outset of the shir. We already learned earlier that we don't look at it and say, oh, you could be Mekadesh ala Pas. No. Since the ikar of Kiddush Friday night is a daraisa, therefore even the yayin for Kiddush Friday night, which is a darabanan, takes precedence for sure over Kiddush Hayom. So there are those that hold it also takes precedence over Havdalah. Continues the Mechaber, and he says like this: we didn't factor in over here yet, what if you have other drinks in your refrigerator that might be available for, let's say, Havdalah? Says the Mishnah Berurah, even according to this opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, that we're going to give precedence to Havdalah for the wine. If you have beer in your refrigerator available for Havdalah, then zicher, take the kais of yayin that you have available and use it Friday night, and make Havdalah on beer. Everybody agrees that you can make Havdalah over beer. The Kiddush HaShichra, harbe poskim oisrim. But to make Kiddush on beer, a lot of poskim say you can't make Kiddush on beer. So you have another option to you for Motzei Shabbos for Havdalah. You have the beer that's in your fridge. So use the beer. For Havdalah, use the yayin for Kiddush Friday night. V'gam ala pas machmer Rabbeinu Tam. And to say that you should make Kiddush ala pas Friday night, Rabbeinu Tam holds that you can't make Kiddush ala pas. So it's not so pashut to jump to the option of Kiddush ala pas Friday night and save the yayin for Motzei Shabbos. V'lachein, therefore, afilu b'shachris tov yoyse sheyikadosh ala yayin im yesh lo shecher lahavdalah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you have beer available for Havdalah, don't even sacrifice Kiddush of day. Use the wine that you have available for Kiddush of day and make Havdalah on beer. Miu, however, says the Mishnah Berurah, when it comes to Kiddush Friday night in Shul, or when it comes to Havdalah Motzei Shabbos in Shul, the Havdalah that you're going to make Motzei Shabbos in Shul, which is being made to Motzei Tzibor, that takes precedence over Kiddush. She'enai ela minig. That takes precedence over the Kiddush Friday night in Shul, which is only a minig. Okay. Ois cotton nun. No, we didn't do that yet. Okay. Now let's go to the last scenario over here in Sif Yod Aleph. Says the Mechaber, 4 lines up, last 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines up, last word on the line. Let's say you have a scenario where after you do whatever dilution you could do, you dilute the wine that's available to you as much as possible. You're going to be left with exactly 2 revi'asin. So you have enough here, by stretching the yayin as far as you could stretch it, you have enough for 2 kaisais shel bracha. Says the Mechaber, what do? Im yesh lo shtei kaisais b'tzumtzamim achar meziga, yekadesh balayla be'echad. You're going to use 1 Friday night for Kiddush. Now, by the way, just understand what this means. You have 2 cups with tzumtzum that each one is going to hold a revi'is. It doesn't mean you have 2 individual kaisais and each one holds a revi'is. That's not what it means. It means that the volume of wine that you have, factoring in your ability to dilute it, is going to give you exactly enough wine to fill a kais twice with a revi'is. Okay? So you're going to be able to fill up a kais Friday night with a revi'is, make Kiddush, drink a male lugmav, and then you'll be able to dilute the remaining wine and create another revi'is that you could use for another kais shel bracha. What should you do? How should you use the wine? Says the Mechaber, Im yesh lo shtei kaisais mitzumtzamim achar meziga, yikadosh balayla be'echad, use 1 for Kiddush Friday night, v'yavdil al hasheni, and use the second one for Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, v'lo yikadosh b'yoim, and you're not going to make Kiddush by day, the Kiddush dalayla adif, because the number 1 is Kiddush Friday night, and the number 2 is Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, and you're not going to be able to make Kiddush at all Shabbos by day, except according to those shitas that we'll learn about later, who hold that you could be Mekadosh ala pas Shabbos by day. But that's very complex, and that's not for here. We're going to discuss that later. Now, let's go to Mishnah Berurah's Katan on Zion. The Kiddush halayla odif ukadela el b'simin zeh sif gimel v'ayin sham b'Mishnah Berurah sif Katan ches, where we explained that Friday night Kiddush is a daraisa, Shabbos morning Kiddush is only a derabanan. And again, even though you could make Kiddush ala pas technically Friday night, but since the ikar of Kiddush Friday night is a daraisa, we elevate the derabanan, the need for wine gets elevated almost to the level of a daraisa. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hamagen Avram Hevi b'shem Shiarei Knesses Hagdola. The Magen Avram brings down a very interesting minig from the Shiarei Knesses Hagdola. He says like this: the Toiv lekadesh al kais gadol. Friday night, you should make Kiddush on a very big kais. Sheyeshayer me oisei ha-kais likiddush hayoim ulahavdalah. What you should do is like this. Friday night, you should make Kiddush on a big kais that holds a revi'is plus at least another 2 male lugmas. So you make Kiddush on this big kais Friday night, and you drink a male lugma. So you made kiddush and you were yoytze kiddush. And then tomorrow morning by day, you should take out that kais, which now has, well, it would have to be a kais plus, it would have to be a revius plus 3 male lugmas. So you use it Friday night and you drink a male lugma. Now the kais has a revius and 2 male lugmas. Shabbos morning, take that kais, that same kais, and make kiddush Shabbos morning on it and drink a male lugma. No, I go back to what I said before. It has to be a kais plus 2 male lugmas. Again, a kais plus 2 male lugmas. Friday night, make kiddush on the kais, drink a male lugma, put the kais down, put it away. Shabbos morning, take out the kais, make kiddush Shabbos morning on it, drink a male lugma, put it away. Motzei Shabbos by Havdalah, take out that kais that now holds the revius, which is the amount the kais has to hold for Havdalah, and make Havdalah on it. So by doing this, you're making kiddush Friday night, kiddush Shabbos morning, and Havdalah all over the same kais. Now you'll ask me, is there a problem of ein oisin mitzvahs chavilos, that we don't bundle up mitzvahs? It's not a problem. The reason it's not a problem is because when do we say ein oisin mitzvahs chavilos? That's when you're being mekayim a lot of mitzvahs at the same time over one case. Like we had the case yesterday or the day before, where you have a challenge. You have to bench ala kais and you have to make kiddush ala kais. We said you have to use 2 separate kaises. You can't use one kais for birkas hamazon and for kiddush, because then you're bundling up mitzvahs. You're doing 2 mitzvahs at the same time over one kais. But that's not what you're doing here. Over here, you're doing 1 mitzvah Friday night on the kais. Now you're using the same kais for Kiddush Hayom, and then later you're going to use the same kais for Matzah Shabbos for Havdalah. That's actually a milah. And we have a precedent for that in other places. For example, Matzah Shabbos Chanukah, we say that you should, let's say those who make Havdalah first, make Havdalah, and then before you put out the Havdalah candle, light the shamash for the Ner Shel Chanukah from the Havdalah candle. Because you use that candle for one mitzvah, use it for another mitzvah. So too over here. You made Kiddush on a kais Friday night, use the same kais for Kiddush Hayom, and then use the same kais for Havdalah. So says the Shiari Knesset Sagdola. Now, points out the Mishnah Berurah, you have an obvious problem. You made Kiddush Friday night, you drank from the kais. Now it's a kais pogum, says the Mishnah Berurah. V'hainu she'yisaknenu b'kol pam shelo yeh pogum. Each time, you're going to have to add wine to the kais to be masaketed, so it shouldn't be a kais pogum. So you'll make Kiddush Friday night, you drink from the kais, add a little bit wine now to the kais, new wine, so now it's no longer a kais pogum, so you could use it Shabbos morning. That's one problem. There's also a second problem. What do you mean? Now you're going to use the kais Shabbos morning, it's not going to be full anymore. You're supposed to make Kiddush over a full kais, says the Mishnah Berurah. V'yikach b'shachris u'ba'havdalah kais kat me'akaidim kedei sheyamale. No, you're not going to actually use the same kais. You're going to use a big kais Friday night that's full. You're going to drink a male lugma from it. Then you're going to drink it into a smaller kais that's still bigger than a revius. And you'll add a little wine so that it shouldn't be pogum. And then after you make Kiddush Shabbos morning, you'll add a little wine so it shouldn't be kais pogum. And you'll put it to a smaller kais that you'll be able to use for Havdalah. Obviously, the third kais is still going to have to be at least a revius, because the kais for Havdalah has to hold at least a revius. Aval El Yerabah, Pikpek Bazah Minig. But the El Yerabah does not like the minig of the Shiari Knesset Sagdola. V'chein b'Maimon Mordechai memoyin bazeh. Maimon Mordechai also doesn't like it because of the Tov Yoisa Lasis Kiminagenu. It's better to follow our standard issue minig, to use a fresh kais for each one. There are various reasons given for this. One reason given for it is that it's a shtickle like you're using a used kais. Come on, we want Kiddush to be made over a nice fresh kais, not over a used kais. There are other reasons as well. Another reason given by the El Yerabah is that this idea that you could be masakin a kais pogum by adding wine to it, that's a di'evid, that's not lechatchila. So we don't want you to do that lechatchila. Don't do this minig in order to do that lechatchila. Okay? Even though we have a bit left to the page over here, we're going to end over here with Sif Yud Beis. Tomorrow's page is shorter, so Mir Hashem, hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to start from here and finish tomorrow's page as well. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schluss of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Ran Shem should send Yeshua Sefuas Parnas Shadumchem to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias called Tzedek. B'mher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.